Informal diplomacy finally sounds not like a pause between alarms but like a daily mechanism for lowering tension between blocs, a quiet rhythm that holds the perimeter while official cameras are off. Accumulated social capital is translated into resource architecture, exchange models, protection of trade lines, Concordat language that survives signing, and the first overloads of execution. The mission enters material interdependence. Peace is measured by synchronized work with critical resources, logistics, and the real-time price of error. A closed office in the capital of Miradin, the world of Mira. Beneath the office stretches the capital's business layer. Freight tracks run toward exchange docks, ad panels refresh raw material rates, and glass crossings carry people who need peace not as a word but as a delivery schedule. The Concordat enters the room with that motion, before any signature.
We can measure strength by fleets for 100 years. Or build stability through trade for 20 years.
Kelvin keeps his eyes on the Mira cabinet's panoramic glass. Transport lines crawl through the ecumenopolis below, too lively a backdrop for choosing fleets over trade.
Name the basis.
Titan pauses at the desk, waiting for a concrete basis, not rhetoric. Behind the panoramic glass of the office, the transport lines of the ecumenopolis crawl, too lively a background for talking about raw materials. Kelvin does not raise his voice. Managers are accustomed to selling the world as a project with an estimate, and not as a dream.
Reich dust in exchange for myriad and dark matter. Quotas, transparent auditing and general arbitration.
Kelvin sets a quota sheet and an arbitration line on the table. Peace is sold here as a project with an estimate.
If this keeps the two halves of the galaxy from collapsing, I'm ready to discuss.
Titan turns to the skyline where the Thunderbolt's lightning was once politics. Readiness to discuss hinges on whether the formula holds both halves of the galaxy. Titan turns his gaze to the city skyline where the Thunderbolt's lightning was once politics, not weather. For a second you can hear the secretary behind the door putting down the folder. Even the Empire learns not to make noise when the price of peace is being decided.
We need a shared ethic of response. Not, who is guilty, but, what is already done by this hour.
Kelvin keeps his voice low. The shared ethic must tally what is done by this hour, not hunt a culprit.
Then the number enters the register together with the owner of the error. Without that, what has been done becomes a convenient screen for whoever wrote the report first.
Titan nods toward draft indicators at the table's edge. A number here invites reality, not boasting.
And when deviation crosses the norm, the dispute is not silenced by a capital's order. Mandatory system reckoning grounds, even if it hits the Reich.
Kelvin traces the threshold scale on his tablet. Past the norm, the system's obligatory reckoning must fire, not argument.
Then we are buying not silence, but the right to publicly name a failure. That is more expensive and more useful.
Titan slides aside the folder the secretary just set down behind the door. Peace on credit of silence is not a deal for him.
And we release a note on how the line has moved, so hope does not feed on emptiness.
Kelvin opens a template for a brief note on how the line has moved. Hope must not feed on emptiness between sessions. The same closed office. Transport lines still stretch behind the panoramic glass. The contract already behaves like a schedule, and not like a speech.
If the Concordat links resources, it must also link cultural codes. Otherwise, mistrust will return at the first crisis.
Same cabinet. The contract already behaves like a schedule. Titan insists resources without cultural codes will bring mistrust back at the first crisis.
I will agree if the cultural protocol does not become soft assimilation. Exchange of teachers, restorers and archivists of the two blocks, yes. Export of political loyalty under the guise of culture, no.
Kelvin adds a cultural protocol line to the trade package. Teachers, restorers, and archivists from both blocks.
And an annual forum of vassal worlds where small cultures speak not as decoration for capital consensus, but as parties able to ask both capitals an inconvenient question.
Titan pulls up an annual vassal world forum on the side screen. Small cultures must speak on equal terms with the centers.
I support it, though in the Reich this will be called a concession to the periphery. Let them call it that. Otherwise harmony really will benefit only the capitals.
Kelvin nods toward the vassal world map by the glass. Harmony must not look profitable only to the capitals.
We note, cultural exchange is the same strategic infrastructure as corridors and clearing.
Titan ranks cultural exchange alongside corridors and clearing on the Concordat's closing sheet. After the closed-door exchange, the decision quickly fans out through working verticals. What sounded like a cautious political hypothesis is immediately decomposed into tariffs, corridors, and access levels. While the capital keeps its daytime rhythm, the financial floor starts treating the Concordat not as a symbol of reconciliation but as a system that must survive the market's first direct stress wave. Financial room, walls covered with interactive delivery charts.
Trade without security corridors is an invitation to pirates.
In the finance hall, Wall charts flare with new peaks. Isabel reads the lines as an ops map where trade without corridors equals an invitation to pirates. The charts on the walls are flashing with new peaks. The market is already sniffing the deal without waiting for a signature. Isabel looks at the lines as an operational map. For her, logistics is the continuation of the war with other coordinates.
3 protected routes: northern, equatorial, and astral.
Livia runs a finger across the panel and pulls up 3 protected routes: northern, equatorial, and astral.
And a single tariff?
Isabel holds her gaze on the 3 corridors intersection on the wall. A single tariff is the next not for her.
A single base and floating military coefficient for the level of threat.
Livia clicks coefficients on the panel: a single base tariff and a floating military coefficient keyed to threat level. Livia runs her finger across the panel, and the coefficients click like the grounds of a removed fuse, only here they turn into numbers, not gunshots.
Formula in the base tariff, military coefficient grounds on their own line.
Isabel splits the screen into 2 lines, the base tariff formula and military coefficient grounds on their own row.
And we publish the ranges in advance so that the market sees the rules before the crisis and not after.
Livia logs tariff ranges in the registry with a before crisis tag. The market must see the rules in advance.
The criterion is that logistics does not stop even with an increase in the threat in the vassal sectors.
Isabel stamps the criterion at the sheet's foot: logistics must not stop even as threat rises in the vassal sectors. The same financial room. On the walls, charts highlight new peaks. The market is ahead of the signature.
Sailors and station crews will spread rumors faster than your tariff PDFs.
Wall charts spike again. Isabel reminds them sailors and station crews will outrun any tariff PDF with rumors.
Then we publish corridor maps and tariff ranges in 2 standard block formats. 1 numbers, double feed.
Livia mirrors 2 block standard formats on adjacent screens: 1 set of numbers, corridor maps, and tariff ranges in a double feed.
And joint briefings for vassal governors so that local elites do not invent their own version.
Isabel opens the vassal governor list. Joint briefings must keep local elites from inventing their own version.
Readability is a layer of security.
Livia recalls a crisis morning at a right trade node when PDFs lost to rumor, and logs it. Readability is a security layer. Livia's word on readability pulls her back to a crisis morning at a right trade node, when PDFs failed to outrun rumor and the only antidote was a public delay table without soft language. Right trade node, crisis corridor, the transport queue is stalled, the screen shows 1 delay, the paper another.
By procedure we close the window for technical reasons.
Then we publish reasons as a minute by node table. Technical reasons is a footnote with a responsible signature. Otherwise it's silence.
The signature will be unpopular.
Popularity doesn't pay for downtime. Readability pays before panic.
Once a quarter we check the narrative drift, not for the sake of censorship, but so that panic does not become politics.
Isabel adds a quarterly narrative drift check to the calendar, not for censorship, so panic does not become politics. Once the tariff matrix and corridor maps reach operational shape, the debate shifts naturally into the laboratory layer, where every number must survive physics, not just messaging. Finance teams still hold range bands in mind while scientists below the stabilizer glow tackle the harder question: can the material base itself sustain the level of trust that looks coherent on paper? Collaborative Protocols Laboratory, night. Containers with samples flicker behind the glass of the chamber. The silence is cut by a soft signal from the stabilizer, a sound that does not give the diplomats at the top a chill, but does it for the scientists every time.
Dark matter is unstable on short cycles. We need dust as a buffer.
In the Joint Protocols Lab, sample containers flicker behind chamber glass. Lay speaks of dark matter's short cycle instability and dust as buffer.
And dust loses its properties during long-term storage. We need your matter as a stabilizer.
Chloe points to a dust container by the stabilizer. Long storage strips its properties, and Mirrodin matter is needed as stabilizer.
This means that individual resources are vulnerable.
Lays looks at the 2 samples apart. Each resource is vulnerable without the pair.
Yes. Together, this is already an industrial standard at the galactic level.
Chloe tucks a strand behind her ear, a tired gesture, and nods. Together the resources already reach a galactic industrial standard. Chloe tucks a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture of weariness she doesn't acknowledge in words. Lays nods a little more noticeably than usual, a rare sign that a scientific dispute has ended not in a draw, but in a common language.
Then we give a trial production cycle. Your matter stabilizes, our dust holds a buffer.
Lays logs a trial cycle in the protocol. Mirrodin matter stabilizes, Reich dust holds the buffer.
We will take field data at each stage, so that the standard is provable.
Chloe starts the field data feed on the terminal. The standard must be provable at every stage.
The criterion is a stable product yield without resource degradation in short and long cycles.
Lays signs the criterion sheet by the chamber, stable yield without resource degradation across short and long cycles. The same laboratory of joint protocols. Behind the glass of the chamber, containers with samples glow with the steady light of a stabilizer.
If we hide the evidence of complementarity, conspiracy theories will take the place of facts.
Containers behind the glass burn with steady stabilizer light. Chloe warns that hidden complementarity evidence will leave the field to conspiracy.
Then we issue an unclassified stability bulletin, methodology, sample ranges, without commercial release.
Lays opens an unclassified bulletin template, methodology, sample ranges, no commercial release.
Mirror publication in both scientific registries.
Chloe pushes the draft to both scientific registries, mirror publication with no lag between blocks.
And small exchanges of students in each other's laboratories, few places, but high visibility.
Lays adds a short student exchange slot list to the annex, few places, high visibility in both laboratories.
Trust in the resource stack is partly a teaching task.
Chloe closes the field data terminal. For her, trust in the resource stack is partly a teaching task, not chemistry alone. The joint method of stability and a bulletin without secret holes hooks least too early in at, when the access boundary barely held on the consciousness route, not on a pretty interface. Test loop ANET, two avatars collapse a boundary, a loop flashes on the panel.
Stabilize with a reset, faster than tracing the route.
A reset hides the hole. First, the route map, and a hard depth limit. Otherwise, stability is set dressing.
Next, Lise carries the rule into the dark matter and dust lab. Provability starts where you can't reset a fault instead of explaining it. After the lab night, negotiations leave sterile instrumentation light and enter the heavy mechanics of life supply chains, where proven formulas must become rhythms of voyages, repairs, and contingency reserves. At the dome terminal, science loses the right to remain abstract. The system is now measured by how many real chains can hold under simultaneous commercial pressure and humanitarian obligation. Logistics terminal under the dome.
We can lead half the dust convoys if we get priority on the repair docks.
The Aquarian delegate traces a convoy slot on the dome terminal. Loading spines vibrate through the floor, a tug hums below, and trade reads as physics again, not signature ink. Loading lines vibrate under the terminal dome. Somewhere below, a tugboat is humming, and the vibration of the floor reminds us, trade is physics, not just signatures. Ruby holds a tablet with a graph of the harvest. The farmer considers the risk not in slogans, but in seasons.
We will give priority, but in exchange for a mandatory reserve for humanitarian supplies.
Ruby lifts a harvest graph on her tablet and pins a humanitarian reserve line beside it. The farmer prices risk in seasons, not slogans.
Trade and humanitarian aid in one package.
The delegate glances from the commercial ledger to the ration icon on the shared screen. One package not yet stitched, already weighed in dispute.
This is how a world that experiences crises is built.
Ruby closes trade corridor and humanitarian lane into one controllable contour on the terminal under the dome.
One condition on the shore. A promise must have a face on the calendar and on the scales.
The Aquarian delegate locks a calendar slot and scale readout on the terminal bezel. A promise without date and mass stays decor.
I support. Bread does not believe in mood, it needs accounting.
Ruby lights calendar, scales, and open corridor together on the terminal, as at a frontier node where a day's delay is already hunger physics. Ruby's line about bread and accounting returns Ruby to rationing on the right frontier, where convoy delay was blamed on market mood until the terminal lit up calendar, scales, and an open corridor together. Without that, any signature stayed decor. Night supply node on the right frontier, one open docking slot, a voyage log, a line labeled humanitarian reserve.
We can shift by a day. The market will calm.
The market in the hall will calm. On the outskirts a day is already hunger physics. We keep ledgers by weight and slot, not by word.
Then we don't show readiness.
Readiness is not a cut ration, it is schedule and corridor matching. Trade here is physics, spine, tug, floor vibration, not a deck.
Past the threshold, we do not discuss how we prefer. We turn on independent verification.
The delegate drags a threshold across the display. Preference sliders gray contour out. Independent verification takes first voice.
Then the local web does not become hostage to someone else's sloppiness.
Ruby reroutes the local supply web through an independent audit node on the terminal schematic. Foreign sloppiness no longer holds the node by the throat.
And we say aloud what we repair crisis assessment. Silence about repair breeds new lies.
The delegate opens a public repair log field. Silence about a fix is flagged as new lie risk, not face-saving economy. The same dome terminal. The loading lines beat in time with the night flight.
The humanitarian reserve is not a charity show, it sets expectations when the harvest breaks.
Ruby highlights the reserve lane against a broken harvest curve on her tablet. Expectation must live before collapse, not after cameras.
Our aquaculture lines can carry the ration patterns your farmers already trust.
The delegate overlays aquaculture ration templates onto Reich farmer trust marks. Docking runs on weight of habit, not declaration.
Then we will standardize packaging and labeling so that convoy crews see one story in both blocks.
Ruby folds 2 block labels into one pallet mockup. Crews must read one story, not fear in foreign type.
And we rotate inspection witnesses from third vassals. Transparency without a circus.
The delegate slots a third vassal witness seal into rotation. Transparency without a stage, only date and weight in the log.
Dignity in a chain is as important as throughput.
Ruby sets a dignity indicator beside throughput on the chain board. Both must reassuring assessment, or speed breaks in a corridor of shame. How Ruby sets dignity in the chain beside throughput returns Ruby to docking with an alien production line, without packaging standards and a witness from a third vassal. Silence about a repair turned into a new lie, and transparency was not a circus but a condition for crews to read one story in both blocks. Mating hanger, 2 labels on one pallet, a third stamp, neutral witness.
Our ration template is familiar to your crews. But without a shared label, people read fear, not weight.
Then one label, one event code, and witness rotation. We log repairs publicly, otherwise silence about a fix breeds rumor again.
We don't want to be set dressing.
Then the witness signature in the log with date and weight. Dignity in the chain is comparable to throughput for me. If it's shameful to look at the sack in the corridor, speed breaks too.
As soon as trade and humanitarian flows are fused into one controllable contour, the protection question moves front and center. Elegant logistics is worth exactly the time it takes to collapse under first targeted disruption. The next session therefore abandons quota language and shifts into tactical grammar. Bases, garrisons, duty cycles, where delay cost is measured not in margin loss but in system-wide rhythm failure. Tactical hull for base security.
If they hit bases in vassal sectors, trade will stop within 24 hours.
Marzides watches the tactical hull main screen. A base mesh rotates like a nervous system, and a vassal node strike tiers trade rhythm on a 24-hour scale. On the main screen of the tactical room, a network of bases slowly rotates, nodes connected by lines, like a nervous system. Sayuri straightens up, the habit of a warrior who hears the word shelter in the word logistics.
Then the bases should work as shield nodes and not just as warehouses.
Sayuri straightens, nodes repaint from warehouses to shield hubs, and logistics again sounds like shelter.
Joint garrisons?
Marzides flags paired garrison slots on the rotating mesh. The question is brief, but reinforcement lines already stretch between blocks.
Yes, and the right to immediate strengthening without political delay.
Sayuri traces a reinforcement arrow past the political delay band. Delay here is measured in system rhythm failure, not margin.
Then we transfer the bases to the trade shield mode. Separate duties for the protection of resource lines.
Marzides switches bases to trade shield mode. Separate watches light along resource lines, not warehouse bays.
And we launch the right of instant amplification according to a pre-signed protocol.
Sayuri drops a pre-signed protocol onto the amplification grounds. No blank political weight field holds the convoy.
The criterion is not a single disruption of convoys due to a delay in a military decision.
Marzides sets the criterion convoy timeline against military decision latency, zero tolerance between them, or the shield is decor. The same tactical room. The network of bases on the main screen is still highlighted guarding resource lines.
Joint garrisons are useless if platoon leaders treat each other as temporary actors.
Sayuri zooms to platoon-leveled temporary actor tags blink between paired icons, and trust never reaches the order.
Then we introduce paired training rotations, short, repeated, on the same sites.
Marzides nails short, repeating rotations into the tactical calendar on shared sites. Habit must outrun the first crisis.
And a common lexicon of distress signals for convoys, so that delay does not cost lives.
Sayuri aligns distress codes on the convoy channel. Delay is tallied in lives, not report minutes.
We detect in both tactical networks with encrypted tails for politically sensitive nodes.
Marzides locks the lexicon into both tactical networks. Encrypted tails on sensitive nodes hide politics, not signal meaning.
Fine. The shield line is also a habit, and not just an order.
Sayuri eases duty highlights on the base mesh, the shield line pulses as habit the body learns before the order. After the tactical session, it becomes clear that force discipline alone is insufficient. If the trade network must outlive a single crisis, it needs a shared timing architecture, not only strike resilience. Focus moves to the navigation center, where defensive reflex gives way to engineering synchronization across routes, windows, and relay nodes so two systems can behave like one predictable stream. Navigation center, on the screen, a grid of transition times.
Your routes in the astral are live, our trade nodes are discrete. Their rhythms conflict.
Bloom watches the navigation board, live and discrete lines meet, then repel, two heartbeats in one diagram. On the navigation center screen, live and discrete lines alternately intersect and then repel each other, like two heartbeats in one chest. Melanie touches the frame of the portal on the diagram and immediately removes her hand, the gesture of a person who remembers. Politics sits behind the edge of the diagram.
Then we connect them through synchronization windows, every 6 hours, without entering void.
Melanie touches the portal frame on the diagram and withdraws. 6-hour windows stitch rhythms without void entry. Politics still sits past the diagram edge.
Too rare for the market.
Bloom drags market pressure against sparse window ticks, gaps between pulses flash amber as vulnerability before the first slip.
Then let's add emergency windows, but only with triple confirmation.
Melanie adds an emergency lane with 3 confirmation ribbons. One key cannot break window discipline.
No time for ambiguity. Let one axis of time cut disputes like a blade.
Bloom draws one time axis through stacked disputes, plural clocks collapse, or the deal phrase into anecdotes before ink. Demanding a single time axis reminds Bloom of a Lotus night shift, restore the system before dawn, and only then chase the paperwork that describes what actually held. Blue Lagoon, already after she joined Lotus, a night lab shift where she and Lise lift the system after a cascading field data failure, and she learns to separate a beautiful explanation from actual recovery.
We can write the perfect report by morning. The real question is whether we restore the system before dawn.
First we restore the system. The report must describe recovery, not replace it.
For her it collapses to order of operations. Paper only counts after what actually held under cascade, otherwise any time axis on the diagram stays decoration.
Yes. If reality is plural, the deal falls apart into anecdotes.
Melanie pins a plural reality warning at the route junction. Without one axis, alignment becomes market gossip.
When the glow of indicators crosses the tolerance band, we do not wait for the mood review begins.
Bloom sets the indicator glow threshold past the tolerance band. Review arms without a hall mood slider.
Good. Local actors will see that rules outrank habit.
Melanie lifts the rule layer above habit markers on the navigation board. Local nodes must see schedule outrank custom.
And outward, only the outcome of the correction, not the winner's excuse, but the trace of the work.
Bloom filters the outward channel to the work trace, the winner excuse template grays, only the correction path exports. Same navigation center. The time grid on the main display has moved to the next 6-hour cycle.
The first time a window breaks, the merchants will blame someone else's block.
Melanie sketches the blame vector on first window break. The default arrow flies at the foreign block before the discrete net reads the live line as strike.
Then we publish merchant watches, neutral time markers, without hints of void.
Bloom publishes merchant watches on a shared face, neutral time marks, void hints stripped from the rim so dispute cannot feed on myth.
With a simple FAQ, in Reichstrade jargon and in the Reich Administrative Register.
Melanie splits the FAQ into 2 lanes, Reichstrade jargon and Imperial Administrative Register on one watch face, without pretty retroactive alignment.
I support. Confusion is a diplomatic vulnerability.
Bloom rims unsince dual format zones on the time grid in crisis assessment. Confusion here is not clerical noise but a scene for blaming the other block.
And a 2-way hotline on controversial schedules, up to the headlines in the feed.
Melanie lights a 2-way hotline for disputed schedules on flanked glass. The channel goes live before the feed can crown a slip a break. Melanie's line about a hotline before headlines hooks her to a training drill on the navigator's astral fief. There the argument was not about diagram beauty but about who gets to call a break first, before the discrete net starts reading the live line as a strike. Navigator's Guild Classroom, on the table, a junction of live astral phases and discrete trade pulses. The fight about public timing runs louder than about coordinates.
Merchants will demand a hotline before rumor reaches the headline.
Then the line is 2-way and ahead of the headline, identical time stamps in both blocks. No, pretty retroactive alignment.
What if a corporate node doesn't answer in time?
Then we publicly log response delay as an interference class, not intent. Otherwise the discrete net will read the live line as an attack.
When schedules, windows, and disputed crossings finally align, the dialogue rises above pure logistics and returns to the most volatile actor in any large agreement, the market. On the diplomatic balcony, the task is no longer to prove the system can move, but to ensure it is trusted by actors who price confidence faster than policy can explain itself. Diplomatic balcony, view of the Mira shopping districts.
The market doesn't believe in slogans. He needs performance guarantees.
The Grindar representative keeps his eyes on the quarters below. Money's steady hum from the balcony reads like a crowd before a price jump, not backdrop for a declaration. The steady hum of the shopping district flows down from the balcony, the sound of money, which can easily be confused with the roar of the crowd before the riot. Apollonia holds a small medallion in her hand, an anchor of calm so that her voice does not waver when it comes to fines.
Then we give him guarantees. Public reports on quotas and fines for failure to deliver.
Apollonia grips her come anchor medallion and sets a sample open quota line on the rail. Delivery breach fines must reach the market before rumor does.
And independent oversight?
The representative on the balcony nods at a blank slot in the inspection calendar. Without named oversight, a guarantee stays one party's promise, not a shared ledger.
Oma in law, Livia in finance, Lays and Bloom in technology.
Apollonia stamps 4 independent tracks on her pad: law, finance, engineering, so neither block can call oversight internal decoration.
Then the inspection schedule for the cycle isn't an appendix to the paper. It's part of the same commitment.
The Grindar representative slides the cycle inspection sheet atop the protocol draft. The schedule shares the signature plane, not a later appendix.
Without repeated verification, even a correct protocol quickly turns into a formality.
Apollonia marks recurring verification slots on the calendar. Without them, even flawless paper on the balcony becomes gallery ritual, not market discipline.
Then we'll divide the reporting into 2 layers, open market and closed for critical infrastructure.
The Grindar representative traces 2 reporting layers: open market above, critical infrastructure under seal, channels never blended.
The market needs transparency, but vulnerability should not become instructions for sabotage.
Apollonia seals the closed infrastructure track on her pad. Transparency for the quarter below, but vulnerability maps do not enter the public feed as a sabotage manual.
And we introduce the right to immediately adjust parameters if trust indicators go beyond the norm.
The Grindar representative touches the trust indicator band on a side display. Past tolerance. Adjustment does not wait for the market's mood. The same diplomatic balcony. The block below is already in the evening lights. The hum of money does not stop.
Sanctions are worthless if the market reads them as a humiliation.
Evening quarter lights flare below the balcony. The Grindar representative keeps his tone hard. A fine read as humiliation zeroes the restraint mechanism itself.
Then we present the adjustments as maintenance, in the same language of engineering culture as in both blocks.
Apollonia flips the public notice template from punishment to maintenance, the same engineering register both Reich and Empire recognize on their schematics.
In public notices, repair, and not punishment.
The representative at the rail nods toward a draft feed line. The question is not softening guilt but which headline outruns the spread jump.
Where possible, where punishment is inevitable, it should be predictable, not theatrical.
Apollonia displays a predictable sanctions scale. Theater above the quarter costs more than the fine itself. The market pays uncertainty twice.
And transcripts of city hearings on major violations, so that rumor does not overtake the fact.
The Grindar representative sets a sample city hearing transcript. Major violation fact must outrun rumor, not chase it in the feed.
Trust is also a tone.
Apollonia releases the medallion. The last market guarantee dispute leaves the balcony. Below, money's hum sounds less like threat than a test of trust's tone. After passing through tariffs, labs, terminals, bases, and market guarantees, all contours converge at a single point where retreat is no longer operationally available and rhetorical decoration becomes useless. The signing hall gathers not only documents but the cumulative weight of months of compromise. Each formula, reserve, and protection protocol must now survive its decisive test by becoming official shared reality. Great Hall. There are 2 documents on the table, the resource protocol and the security corridors agreement. The photons of the spotlights are cold, like those of an operation. The audience in the hall sits straight, as if the noise could disrupt the exchange rate. It smells of fresh paper and light ozone from printing. Even the Empire's signature has a smell.
The Mirrodin Empire confirms the supply of dark matter according to interblock quotas.
Titan sets his palm on the resource protocol under cold spotlights. Imperial dark matter confirmation is not speech but a line tomorrow's shipment must match.
The Efolsky Reich confirms the supply of dust according to the agreed schedules and reserves.
Kelvin holds the document a second longer than the gesture demands a reality check. Dust, schedules, and reserves must survive not the hall but the first logistics crisis.
Financial clearing starts from this hour.
Livia drops the clearing stamp into shared recorded time. From this hour, settlement tracks in both blocks no longer live as parallel legends of one deal.
Federative bases are transferred to trade line protection mode.
Isabel marks federative bases shifting to line protection on the corridor map. For her it is the same rule as night watch, until 3 feeds align, outward silence reads as collusion. For Isabel, shifting bases to trade line protection reads as the same rule she learned on Lotus night shifts, until 3 public feeds align on one-time code, nothing goes outward, silence reads as collusion. Lotus Hall, 3 independent feeds must converge into one warning line, otherwise security reads silence as proof of collusion.
Second channel lags by a second.
A second is enough for an alternate text. We keep 3 channels in sync or we release nothing.
On those shifts I reconciled 3 feeds against one-time code, until they aligned, nothing went outward.
Isabel reduces the memory to a conclusion for this signing. If 3 feeds don't converge, silence reads as collusion. Protocol visibility rests not on a handsome signature under the text, but on feed sync and an inspection schedule.
Scientific monitoring of resource stability will begin immediately.
Lays lights the resource stability monitoring track on a side screen. The science line starts in the same hour as the table's ink, not after the ceremony.
Today we are signing not just trade, we sign sustainability.
Marzid stands between the 2 documents on the table, fresh paper and print ozone. The word sustainability must survive a gallery that tomorrow explains figures to bodies that remember war. Kelvin places his palm on the document for a second longer than necessary for the gesture, a reality check. Titan raises his head to the gallery. Journalists and military observers are sitting there, who tomorrow will have to explain the meaning of the numbers to people who remember the war in their bodies.
Signature isn't enough, there must be a vow of repeatability. Tomorrow must recognize yesterday's promise.
Titan lifts his eyes to the gallery. Journalists and military observers sit straight as if noise could break exchange rates. The vow of repeatability is addressed to tomorrow's chronicle, not the hall.
Rhetoric dies where the tally becomes a crisis assessment.
Kelvin nods toward the shared tally line set above the signature. Rhetoric ends where both blocks see one figure before interpretation.
And the shared tally must be visible before explanations. First the line, then interpretation. Otherwise we gift the market 2 legends of one signature again.
Titan passes his palm over the blank interpretation field on the display. Line first, commentary second, otherwise one signature breeds 2 market legends again.
Engineering backs this not for love of poetry. Sync indicators depend on a figure press offices can't blur.
Marzid's points at the engineering sync indicator. The figure is harder than any press release. Dual commentary cannot blur it.
Legally we fix it. Sustainability, in a public package without a shared scale, is an empty reference, and empty references don't get signatures.
Irma traces the legal writer with her pen. Sustainability without a shared scale stays an empty reference, and empty references do not reach the seal. The gallery shifts above. Someone closes a laptop, someone opens it again. People sense today's signature becomes tomorrow's chronicle check, not just for the hall. Kelvin's word about the tally as a shared record returns Isabel to that bridge of second life. Their timing pressure tried to outrun the human in the corridor until the register accepted cost as deed, not a convenient reading. Isabel is on that same bridge again after her second life. Operation Timer bleeds crisis assessment while command demands the window even as a civilian shuttle enters the corridor. Decision logs are finally open across key channels, but pressure not to miss the window still sounds like an old incantation.
Civilian shuttle in corridor. Request delay.
We lose the window.
30 seconds more, and the target slips.
A lost window can be reversed. Lost people cannot.
Target slips into shadow. That is on your conscience.
Conscience begins where the window ends before the human.
Signing under a shared record for her still begins where the window cannot close before a human in the corridor, otherwise harmony stays a formula without a price.
And let the threshold be not a threat but a right of honesty, intervention before shame turns into policy.
Titan marks the intervention threshold on the scale, not a threat but a right. Act before shame over a breach becomes accusation politics.
Then capital and reputation stop being enemies in one mind.
Kelvin closes the tablet line where capital and reputation meet in one obligation, otherwise tomorrow's trader chooses profit against honesty again.
And we write briefly what shifted toward the better, so panic does not fill the void with alien meaning.
Titan drafts a brief note on what shifted toward the better. The void after signing is more dangerous than a breach. Alien meaning fills it unless their line arrives first. The same great signing hall. The soffits are dimmed, the gallery lingers at the railing.
The gallery will leave with photographs. They need to take away one phrase. Quotas survive contact with reality.
Kelvin looks to the gallery at the rail, soffits dimmed, photographs must carry one phrase. Quotas survived contact with reality, not rhetoric.
Then we are planning a joint press grid, one chronology, double commentary, without competing mythologies.
Titan spreads the joint press grid schematic, one chronology, two commentaries, no competing myths of the same signature.
I will synchronize the first release of figures with the opening of markets in both halves.
Livia locks the first figure release to market open in both halves. The Concordat begins not with hall applause but with one shared record on the board at the opening bell.
And we invite vassal economists to the second briefing, not for decoration, but as witnesses.
Titan marks vassal economists on the invite list. The second briefing is not decor. Witnesses must keep the Concordat from becoming one capital's myth.
The Concordat lives by repetition, not by today's printing.
Kelvin lowers his hand from the resource protocol. The table already bears ink, but for him the Concordat begins in tomorrow's audit of the same line, not today's printing.